11:41 p.m., March 7, 2014, Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia. The night had not yet given way to dawn. The runway lights sliced through the darkness as another international flight prepared for departure, appearing no different from the thousands that had taken off before it. Everything seemed routine. The aircraft had cleared its inspections, the weather posed no significant threat, the crew was highly experienced, and the passengers were simply beginning another ordinary journey. No one on board could have imagined that within a few hours, this flight would become the greatest mystery in modern aviation history.
Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, a Boeing 777-200ER, was scheduled to fly from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people on board, 227 passengers, and 12 crew members. Families, business travelers, tourists, and students all carried their own stories, believing they would arrive at their destination by sunrise. Instead, they would vanish into one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries the world has ever known.
The Boeing 777 was regarded as one of the safest and most reliable commercial aircraft ever built. Designed for long-haul operations, it featured advanced navigation systems, redundant safety mechanisms, and an exceptional operational record. At the controls was Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with approximately 18,000 flight hours and decades of experience. Beside him sat First Officer Fareeq Abdul Hamid, a young but well-trained co-pilot progressing through the final stages of his professional career. According to publicly available investigation reports, there was no confirmed evidence of any serious mechanical defect before departure.
The aircraft had sufficient fuel for the journey. Maintenance records showed no critical abnormalities, and the flight plan had been approved through standard procedures. At 12:41 a.m. local time, MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport and climbed steadily into the night sky. During the first 40 minutes, everything unfolded exactly as expected. The aircraft followed its assigned route over the South China Sea while communicating normally with air traffic controllers. Its transponder continuously transmitted its identity, altitude, and position, allowing civilian radar to monitor its progress with precision.
For pilots, controllers, and airline operators, this phase of flight represented nothing unusual. It was simply another routine overnight journey between two major Asian cities. Yet history often changes course in moments that appear completely ordinary. At approximately 1:19 a.m., the cockpit made what would become its final routine radio transmission to Malaysian air traffic control as the aircraft prepared to transition into Vietnamese-controlled airspace. The communication sounded calm and entirely normal. Nothing in those final recorded words suggested distress, confusion, or urgency. Then, within minutes, something extraordinary happened.
The aircraft's transponder, the system responsible for broadcasting its identity and altitude to civilian radar, stopped transmitting. Almost instantly, MH370 disappeared from secondary radar. There was no distress call, no emergency code, no indication of fire, decompression, or catastrophic failure. One moment the aircraft was being tracked across the South China Sea. The next, it had simply vanished from the screens that were meant to follow it. Initially, investigators considered the possibility of a technical malfunction.
Communication failures, while uncommon, are not unheard of in commercial aviation. But as the minutes passed, the situation became increasingly difficult to explain. Air traffic controllers repeatedly attempted to re-establish contact on multiple radio frequencies, yet every call was met with silence. Meanwhile, military primary radar, unaffected by the aircraft's transponder, began revealing a far more disturbing picture. According to official investigation findings, MH370 had not simply disappeared,
it appeared to have changed course, turning away from its planned route and flying back across the Malay Peninsula. Instead of heading toward Beijing, the aircraft was moving into darkness, away from the air corridors where it was expected to be.
In that single moment, the disappearance of Flight MH370 transformed from what seemed like a communications failure into something far more unsettling. Every new radar return raised fresh questions. Every minute without contact deepened the mystery. What had happened inside the cockpit? Why had the aircraft altered its course? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if the plane was still flying, where exactly was it going?
The silence that followed was unlike anything modern aviation had ever experienced. Commercial aircraft do not simply disappear. Every flight is surrounded by overlapping layers of technology: civilian radar, military radar, satellite communications, emergency locator transmitters, and constant radio contact. For a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people to vanish without leaving behind a clear explanation seemed almost impossible. Yet that was precisely the reality investigators were now facing. While airlines attempted to contact the aircraft, search and rescue authorities began preparing for what they initially believed would be a routine emergency response somewhere over the South China Sea. No one yet understood that they were searching in the wrong place. As dawn broke over Southeast Asia, Malaysia Airlines officially announced that it had lost contact with Flight MH370. Families waiting at Beijing Capital International Airport watched departure boards that still showed delays instead of answers. Hours passed without any confirmed information. Telephone calls went unanswered. News outlets across Asia interrupted their regular programming. Aviation experts struggled to explain how one of the world's most advanced passenger aircraft could simply vanish. With every passing hour, concern slowly transformed into global disbelief. Then came the first major breakthrough. Military radar records suggested that shortly after disappearing from civilian tracking, the aircraft had executed an unexpected maneuver. Instead of continuing northeast toward Beijing, MH370 appeared to make a sharp left turn, crossing back over the Malay Peninsula before flying northwest toward the Andaman Sea. This was no minor navigation error. It represented a deliberate and significant change in direction. The aircraft continued to appear on primary military radar for several more minutes before it too finally disappeared beyond radar coverage. By then, the search area had expanded dramatically. What had begun as a rescue mission over the South China Sea was suddenly stretching across thousands of square kilometers. Investigators soon discovered another crucial piece of evidence, one that would redefine the entire case. Although the aircraft's transponder had stopped transmitting, another onboard system, known as the Satellite Data Unit, had quietly continued communicating with an Inmarsat satellite. Every hour after the aircraft disappeared, another handshake was recorded, one after another, hour after hour. The implications were staggering. Flight MH370 had not vanished immediately after losing contact. It had continued flying for nearly 7 hours. Those hourly satellite handshakes became one of the most important pieces of evidence in aviation history. Engineers at Inmarsat analyzed the timing and frequency characteristics of each signal, calculating how far the aircraft could have been from the satellite during every exchange. Their analysis produced two enormous possible flight paths, known as the Northern Corridor and the Southern Corridor. One stretched across Central Asia. The other extended deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean, one of the most isolated and unforgiving regions on Earth. As additional satellite data was examined, investigators increasingly concluded that the southern route was far more likely. If correct, it meant that MH370 had flown for thousands of kilometers over empty ocean,
far beyond the range of civilian radar, until it eventually exhausted its fuel somewhere in the vast Indian Ocean. The realization stunned investigators. The primary search operation had been focused in completely the wrong location during the critical first days after the disappearance. The response quickly became one of the largest multinational search operations ever undertaken. Aircraft from Australia, Malaysia, China, the United States, and several other nations began scanning enormous sections of ocean. Naval vessels equipped with advanced sonar systems crossed rough seas in search of any sign of floating debris. Satellites examined millions of square kilometers of water, identifying countless objects that initially appeared promising, only to be ruled out one after another. Every new lead generated hope. Almost every lead ended in disappointment.
What made the search especially difficult was the sheer scale of the southern Indian Ocean. Violent storms, towering waves, powerful currents, and extreme isolation turned every search mission into an enormous logistical challenge. Even with the world's most advanced technology, locating a single aircraft in such an immense expanse of water was comparable to searching for a needle scattered across an ocean. Meanwhile, investigators faced an even darker question. If MH370 had intentionally changed course and continued flying for hours, who or what had been controlling the aircraft?
11 single question transformed the disappearance of MH370 from an aviation accident into one of the most intensely investigated mysteries of the 21st century. Investigators examined every possibility, no matter how unlikely. Could a catastrophic electrical failure have disabled the aircraft's communications while leaving it capable of flight? Could a fire have forced the crew to divert before incapacitating everyone on board? Was there a rapid decompression that left the aircraft flying on autopilot for hours with no conscious pilot at the controls? Or had someone inside the cockpit deliberately altered the flight path? Attention inevitably turned toward Captain Zaharie Ahmad Shah. As the pilot in command, he possessed both the experience and the knowledge to operate every system aboard the Boeing 777. Investigators searched his home, examined his personal computer, interviewed family members, friends, and colleagues, and reviewed his financial records, medical history, and professional background. One discovery attracted worldwide attention. Investigators found that he had used a home flight simulator. Among thousands of ordinary simulator files, reports later revealed that one deleted simulation appeared to involve a long flight ending over the southern Indian Ocean. The finding immediately fueled speculation that the disappearance had been carefully planned. However, speculation was not evidence. Official investigators emphasized that no definitive proof established Captain Zaharie's involvement in intentionally causing the disappearance. The simulator data alone could not explain what happened that night. Pilots frequently practice unusual flight scenarios, and investigators found no conclusive evidence of political motives, financial pressure, mental illness, or personal circumstances that could explain such an act. Even years later, the final Malaysian investigation stated that it could not determine who had been flying the aircraft after communications were lost. The captain remained a central figure in public debate, but not a man officially proven guilty.
As months passed, the search entered a new phase. Sophisticated underwater vehicles scanned the ocean floor using high-resolution sonar, mapping mountains, deep trenches, and underwater ridges that had never been surveyed before. Search crews operated in one of the harshest marine environments on Earth. Despite covering more than 120,000 square kilometers of seabed, no confirmed wreckage was found. It became the most expensive search operation in aviation history, yet the aircraft itself remained hidden beneath an ocean that seemed determined to protect its secrets. Then, more than a year after the disappearance, the first undeniable clue finally emerged.
On July 29, 2015,
a piece of aircraft debris washed ashore on Reunion Island, a French territory in the western Indian Ocean, nearly 4,000 kilometers from the suspected crash zone. Aviation experts quickly identified it as a flaperon, a movable control surface from the wing of a Boeing 777. Serial markings and engineering analysis later confirmed that it belonged to MH370. For the first time since the aircraft vanished, investigators possessed physical evidence proving that the plane had indeed ended its journey in the Indian Ocean.
Over the following years, additional fragments believed to be from MH370 were recovered along the coastlines of Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Madagascar. Ocean current modeling demonstrated that debris released in the southern Indian Ocean could naturally drift westward across thousands of kilometers before reaching the shores of eastern Africa. These discoveries strengthened the conclusion that the aircraft had crashed somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean, but they still failed to reveal exactly where.
Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the MH370 investigation is not what investigators discovered, but what they never found. No distress call, no verified eyewitness account, no confirmed final radar position, no complete wreckage, no flight recorders, no final explanation. More than a decade has passed since MH370 disappeared, yet its story continues to haunt aviation experts, investigators, and the families of the 239 people who never returned home. The disappearance fundamentally changed international aviation. Aircraft tracking systems were strengthened, satellite monitoring improved, and new global standards were introduced to reduce the possibility of another commercial airliner vanishing without a trace. Even in its absence, MH370 reshaped the future of flight. Flight MH370 remains more than an aviation mystery. It stands as a reminder that even in an age of satellites, artificial intelligence, and global connectivity, the world still holds places where answers can disappear, and where some of history's greatest secrets continue to hide beneath the silence of the sea.